Chapter 11 The Song of Scars. Andrew awoke to a world that was silent, but no longer dead. The violet haze over Oak Haven had vanished, replaced by a gray, cold dawn. He lay on the stone floor of the temple, feeling every crack in the granite beneath his back. The pain, which had once been a blinding fire, had settled into a dull, rhythmic pulse. He tried to move his shoulders. What remained of his wings, the charred stumps that had once felt like symbols of his greatest defeat, was no longer dead weight. He felt no strength for flight in them, but he felt something else. Something that vibrated in harmony with the world around him. Alara sat nearby, cleaning her blades. When she saw him open his eyes, she immediately approached him. "You look different," she said, hesitating. "Your eyes. That heavenly chill is gone. They are brown. Like the earth." Andrew sat up with her help. He looked at his palms. They were no longer radiant. They were calloused, dirty, and covered in scars from the fight. But when he touched the stone of the temple, a vision flashed through his mind. It was not a vision of celestial glory, but of the laborer who had carved that stone centuries ago. He felt the man's exhaustion, and his hope that he was building something that would outlast him. "Everything has changed, Alara," Andrew whispered. "My magic, the heavenly kind, is gone. It burned up in that flame. But in its place, I hear things." "What do you hear?" Andrew looked toward a group of survivors slowly gathering in the square. They were confused, wounded, and broken. Before, he would have seen them only as biological units requiring salvation. Now, however, he felt their grief like a fine thread touching his own heart. "I hear their souls," Andrew replied. "Not as words, but as a melody. Every scar they have has its own tone." He stood up and walked slowly toward a young woman sobbing over the ruins of her home. Alara watched him intently. Andrew did not begin to preach about a divine plan, nor did he attempt a miraculous healing. Instead, he simply placed a hand on her shoulder. In that moment, something extraordinary happened. A faint, silvery dust released from his charred wings. It was not a light that burned, but a warmth that understood. The woman stopped crying. She looked at Andrew, and for the first time since the infection began, peace appeared in her eyes. She did not forget her pain, but the pain stopped crushing her. Andrew took it into himself. "That is your new kind of power," Alara whispered, stepping closer. "You are no longer the one who judges from above. You are the one who bears the weight with us. Your sacrifice took your wings, but it gave you the ability to share the burden." Andrew nodded. He felt weaker than ever, yet stronger in places he hadn't known existed within him. But with this gift came a new danger. By opening himself to human suffering, he had become a beacon for the Light Eater. "It senses me," Andrew said, looking toward the dark mountains to the north, where the rest of the void had retreated. "To it, I am no longer just a fallen angel to be destroyed. I am a threat because I am taking away its only food, despair." "In that case," Alara said, handing him his sword, which was now just a simple piece of steel, "we will have to turn that despair into rage. Oak Haven was only the beginning. The Eater will now try to poison the very roots of the world." Andrew gripped the hilt of the sword. For the first time in his long life, he felt that his path to redemption did not lead back to the thrones, but deeper into the hearts of those who suffer. Chapter 12 A Dance with the Fever of Souls. The road to the Crying Mountains led through the Valley of Oblivion, a landscape where mist clung constantly to the ground like a gray shroud. Andrew and Alara arrived at a settlement called Grey Creek just as the sun was a mere pale smudge in the sky. The village was eerily silent. No smoke rose from the chimneys, and grain rotted in the fields, unharvested. "Do you feel it?" Alara whispered, instinctively drawing one of her daggers. "The air here is heavy, as if you could drown in it." Andrew stopped. His charred wings shuddered beneath his cloak. He felt more than just the weight of the air, he felt a disharmony. It was as if someone were playing an out-of-tune instrument directly inside his head. "This isn't the void in its pure form," he said softly. "It's an echo. An epidemic of hopelessness. They entered the first cottage. A family lay there on a bed, father, mother, and 2 children. Physically they appeared fine, but their eyes were open and vacant. They did not move, they did not speak. They simply stared at the ceiling while a faint, violet smoke emanated from their skin. They are alive, but their souls are trapped in an endless loop of their worst memories, Andrew explained. He stepped toward the youngest child and placed a hand on his chest. He was instantly hit by a wave of pure terror, visions of a dark figure carrying away the light, the sound of the world tearing apart. Andrew staggered. Before, he would have simply purged such an infection with heavenly fire. Now, however, he had to use his new power. "Elara, I must enter that darkness," he said, sweat breaking out on his forehead. "I have to pull that pain into myself. But there are dozens of them here. If I do it for each one individually, it will consume me before we even reach the mountains." "Then do it all at once," Elara suggested. "Take my hand. I will be your anchor, so you don't drown in their ocean." They walked out to the village square, where the greatest concentration of that spiritual rot had gathered. Andrew sat on the ground in the center of the settlement. Elara knelt behind him, placed her hands on his shoulders, and braced herself firmly. Andrew spread what remained of his wings. The charred stumps did not glow, but they began to vibrate. Andrew opened his consciousness wide. It felt as if liquid lead were being poured into his ears. He heard the wailing of the entire village. He felt every failure, every loss, every pang of conscience these people had ever felt. Thousands of shards of pain began to prick him like needles. His body began to shake uncontrollably. A low, raspy sound escaped his throat. The silvery dust from his wings swirled around them like a small storm. "Let it pass through you, Andrew!" Elara shouted, though the weight was pressing even her to the ground. "Don't keep it! You are just a conduit!" Andrew understood. He wasn't meant to just accept the pain, he was meant to transform it. Within his core, he began to crush that dark energy with his own will for redemption. What was hopelessness, he changed into compassion. What was fear, he changed into the recognition of a shared fate. Suddenly, a pressure wave erupted from Andrew's body. It wasn't light, but a transparent tremor that rippled through the entire village. The violet smoke dissipated. In the cottages, the first deep breaths could be heard. Children began to cry, parents began to embrace. Life was returning, but the price was visible on Andrew. His skin was even paler now, deep shadows circled his eyes, and new, red cracks appeared on his charred wings. He lay exhausted in the mud, Elara holding him in her arms. "They are free," Andrew exhaled. "But the Eater knows exactly where I am now. That wave was like a gunshot in the silence." "Then let him know," Elara said, wiping his forehead. "Today you saved 50 souls without a single stroke of a sword. That's more than your brothers ever did in their golden armor." Andrew looked at the villagers as they began to step out of their doors. They looked at him not with awe for a god, but with gratitude for someone who had shared their hell. It was then he realized that his redemption was not about becoming an angel again, but about becoming a perfect sanctuary for humanity. Chapter 13: The Iron Warden of Forgotten Thresholds. The foot of the crying mountains was not formed of stone, but of the frozen agony of the earth. The rocks here were the color of dried blood, and the wind that tore through the gorges sounded like an endless sob. The higher Andrew and Elara climbed, the thinner the air became, and the more strongly Andrew felt the proximity of the Light Eater's prison. It was like standing before a colossal cauldron radiating a piercing, numbing chill. The path to the only pass, however, was intersected by a massive gate carved directly into the mountain. Before it stood a figure that seemed to have grown from the rock itself. It was the Warden of Thresholds. It was neither angel nor man, but a being fashioned from steel and ancient runes. Its armor was coated in a layer of frost, and in its hands, it gripped a massive two-handed hammer, the head of which was forged into the likeness of a screaming face. "Halt!" thundered the Warden's voice, triggering small avalanches on the surrounding slopes. "No one impure may pass to the seals. Return to the mud from which you sprang." Andrew stepped forward, leaning on his simple sword. I am Andrew, formerly an archangel of Empyreum. I come to prevent the Eater's awakening. The Warden slowly lowered its head, and its blue eye slits fixed upon Andrew's charred wings. I see only a shadow that lies. I see a fallen being carrying the rod of mortality and the stench of the void. You are desecrated, fallen. Your coming would only weaken the seals. He saved our lives! Elara cried out, reaching for her bow. Without him, the valley wouldn't even exist anymore. The words of mortals are like leaves in the wind. The being snapped, raising its hammer. My command is absolute. Passage is permitted only to those whose light is unstained. You, fallen one, are darkness. Prepare for judgment. Andrew understood that words would not suffice this time. The Warden was programmed for a perfection that Andrew had long since lost. He had to fight, but he knew that against such power, his human body stood no chance of victory through raw strength. Elara, stay back, Andrew commanded. This is my fight. I must prove to him that there is strength even in ruins. The battle began without warning. The Warden moved with unexpected speed, its hammer tracing a crushing arc. Andrew did not dodge away. Instead, he lunged forward beneath the strike. The ground where he had stood a second before exploded into 1,000 shards. Andrew attempted a slash, but his steel sword only slid harmlessly off the Warden's runic armor. With a strike of its elbow, the Warden threw him 30 feet away. Andrew landed in the sharp gravel and felt his shoulder snap. Your weakness is proof of your guilt, the Warden declared, marching toward him with the relentless regularity of a metronome. Andrew rose with effort, tasting blood in his mouth. But with the blood came that new sensation, his power to share suffering. This time, however, he did not aim it at healing, but at the Warden. Through the touch of his energy, he felt the Warden's essence. It was lonely. Thousands of years standing in the frost, thousands of years without a single touch of life. You are a prisoner too, Andrew wheezed, moving back into a defensive stance. You think you serve order, but you are just a forgotten tool of those who left you here. Silence! The Warden roared and attacked again, this time with a series of rapid strikes. Andrew danced on the edge of death. Every movement pained him, every parry tore at his muscles. But with every clash, Andrew connected more deeply with the Warden's energy. He stopped trying to kill the Warden. Instead, he began to use the remaining silver essence from his wings to infect the Warden with human emotion. The Warden slowly lowered the hammer and rested it on the ground. Its massive shoulders slumped, as if the weariness of the entire world had settled upon them after centuries. It looked at Andrew and then at Elara, who was watching its every move with her bow drawn tight. You are not an angel, the Warden spoke after a long silence. You are something more. You are a bridge between that which is eternal and that which ends. Pass, Andrew. But know that beyond this gate, your suffering will no longer be your strength, but your greatest weakness. The Eater will be waiting for it. With a deep thudding rumble, the massive gate began to open. Chapter 14. The Mirror of Truth. The air inside the mountain was stagnant and freezing, saturated with the scent of ozone and ancient, forgotten dust. The Hall of Echoes was not merely a cavern, it was a geometrically perfect cathedral carved into black obsidian. In the center of the hall, surrounded by 7 pulsing pillars of energy, the seals, floated a vast surface resembling the face of still water, suspended vertically in space. The Mirror of Truth. I can feel him, Elara whispered, clutching her chest. The prison, it doesn't just hold the Eater in chains. It's poisoning him. Andrew took a step forward. The seals hummed with a deep tone that resonated within his charred wing stumps. To repair the seals, I must enter the mirror. I must look at who I was, stripped of all the lies I've told myself. I'm coming with you, Elara said, stepping toward him. No. Andrew stopped her gently but firmly. This is a trial of identity. The mirror reflects only what belongs to my essence. If you were to enter, it could tear you apart into memories I cannot bear. Andrew took a breath, for the first time with full awareness of his human lungs, and stepped into the cold, silvery surface of the mirror. The world around him vanished. He was no longer in the cavern. He stood on the battlefield above the city of Lyrian, thousands of years in the past. He saw himself, radiant, motionless, an archangel with wings as pure as fallen snow. In his hand, he held a sword of white fire, and in his eyes was absolute, cold justice. "Do you see me?" the voice of his past self spoke. It was beautiful, harmonious, but lacked any hint of warmth. "You were perfect. You were the law. Why did you trade yourself for this?" The mirror began to project Andrew's memories, but not as he remembered them. It showed him the faces of thousands of people he had allowed to die in other wars Alara knew nothing about. It showed him his pride, with which he had looked upon mortals as mere insects in the cycle of the cosmos. "Your redemption is just another form of your pride," the image of the archangel continued. "Do you think your suffering has value? Do you think that by suffering with them, you are erasing the blood on your hands? No. You are just enjoying the feeling of being a martyr so you don't have to face the emptiness of your own existence." Andrew felt the ground vanishing beneath his feet. The mirror was not attacking his actions, but his motives. Was his help to the people true compassion, or just a desperate attempt to save his own soul from punishment? The image of the archangel lashed its wings and struck Andrew to his knees. "Look at your stumps. They are the symbol of your failure. You are a traitor to heaven and a stranger on earth. You belong nowhere." Andrew dug his fingers into the illusory dust of the mirror. He felt doubt consuming him. But then, in that darkness, he felt something else. A small, glowing spark of pain that was not his own. It was the echo of Alara, waiting for him outside. It was the memory of the mother from Oakhaven. "You're right," Andrew whispered, lifting his head. "My pride brought me here. And perhaps even my desire for redemption is selfish." The image of the archangel smiled triumphantly, but Andrew continued. "But my pain is real. And the love I feel for these broken beings, even if I didn't understand it before, that no longer belongs to me. It belongs to them. If I am a traitor to heaven, so be it. If I am a stranger on earth, I accept it. But I will not look back with a longing for your perfection. Because your perfection was blind." Andrew stood up. For the first time, he did not try to straighten himself to look majestic. He let his charred wings hang, his face remain dirty, and his body stay weary. "I am no longer the one who holds the sword of justice," Andrew said firmly. "I am the one who holds the hand of the dying. And that is more than you ever were." In that moment, the mirror of truth shattered. Not into sharp shards, but into millions of sparks of light that began to sink into Andrew's body. The illusion of the perfect archangel vanished. Andrew found himself back in the Hall of Echoes. But something had changed. The 7 seals, which had previously only hummed, now glowed with a silvery radiance that matched the tone of Andrew's new power. By accepting his imperfection, he had become the key. "Andrew!" Alara cried out, running to him. "Did it work? The seals are calm." "Not yet," Andrew said, looking at the central pillar, where an opening for the final sacrifice was now appearing. "The mirror showed me the way. The seals don't need my blood, nor my power. They need my story. I must become part of the prison to keep it closed." From the depths of the mountain, a dark, hungry laughter echoed. The Light Eater felt that its time was drawing near. Chapter 15. The Bond of Mortality. The Hall of Echoes began to tremble. The silvery glow of the seals, which for a moment had seemed stable, began to turn a bloody red under the onslaught of sheer hatred welling up from the depths below. The Light Eater understood that Andrew intended to sacrifice the last thing connecting him to eternity, his memories of heaven. "I have to do it, Alara," Andrew said, his voice fading into the rumble of falling stone. "If I place the purity of Empyreum into the seals, they will become indestructible. But I will forget everything. I will forget what the light of the first source looks like. I will forget the song of the spheres. I will become nothing but an empty vessel in human skin." Alara grabbed his wrist. Her grip was convulsive. "And will you forget me too?" Will you forget Oakhaven? Why you did all this? Andrew looked into her eyes. When I surrender my angelic essence, everything inscribed in my ethereal soul will vanish. Only what this body has learned will remain. It is a risk I must take so that the world may live. Andrew stepped toward the central pillar. He placed both palms on the cold surface. He began the ritual. He felt the first memories tearing away from his mind, visions of golden palaces, the faces of angelic brothers, the feeling of soaring above the clouds. It was as if someone were plucking shards of gemstones from his head. At that moment, however, the ground beneath them split open. It wasn't a monster that erupted from the rift, but a wave of black, parasitic consciousness. The Light Eater spoke directly to Alara, not to Andrew. Do you see him? He wants to leave you. He wants to become a puppet without memory. But I offer you a different path, mortal. Give him your blood. Mix your human suffering with his remaining power. Repair the seals together, without the sacrifice of his memories. He will remain who he is. He will stay with you. Alara, don't listen to him. Andrew roared, while his body began to glow with a blinding, fading light. Alara looked at Andrew, who was vanishing before her eyes in the agony of the ritual. She saw his pain and knew that if he completed his sacrifice, she would lose a friend and the world would lose a hero who could lead it. She wanted to save him. She wanted him to remain himself. She reached for her dagger and, instead of attacking the darkness, she cut into her palm. She pressed her bloodied hand onto Andrew's back, directly between the charred stumps of his wings. I won't let you go into the void alone, she cried out. In that second, the ritual inverted. The blood of a mortal, full of emotion, fear, and love, mingled with the angelic essence. The seals did not harden into indestructible heavenly diamond. Instead, they transformed into something living, pulsing, and fragile. It was a human knot. The seals were repaired, but they were no longer held by divine power, but by the strength of their mutual bond. The Eater was cast back, its hunger sated for a time, but the prison was no longer absolute. It was now tethered to their lives. As long as the two of them believed in hope, the prison would hold. However, if their bond broke, or if they fell into despair, the Eater would break free with tenfold strength. The mountain went silent. The glow faded. Andrew slumped to the ground, still remembering everything, his guilt, his pride, and Alara. But his charred wings had changed. They were no longer stumps. In their place remained only two long, deep scars crossing his back like a reminder of what he had sacrificed. What have you done? Andrew exhaled, looking at Alara. He felt power within him, but it was a power now dangerously intertwined with every beat of his heart. I saved you, Alara said, her voice trembling. Perhaps I have condemned the world to an eternal struggle by doing so, but I will not allow you to be just an empty statue. If the world is to survive, it must survive with us. Exactly as we are. Andrew looked around the Hall of Echoes. The seals were beating like a heart. It was beautiful and terrifying all at once. The world was not definitively saved, it had only been given a chance to fight another day. And the price for this decision was etched into the very fabric of reality.